Wasn't there some speculation that she was on Epstein's yacht at one point in time?
Terrible. Like, guys,
January 2026 hit like a reset switch, and Meghan Markle likely believed the past was finally sealed shut.
How about the other
So
prince?
you got to go to again.
How about the other prince, the one that's Epstein's friend?
Oh, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
What?
Yeah.
First of all, how odd is that guy when they're interviewing him and talking to him?
Yeah.
It's like, what?
The Queen kicked him to the curb.
For years, the whispers had floated around quietly in the background, but it seemed like those old rumors were fading away. The dots never fully connected. The stories stayed scattered, and the yacht talk felt like something that would slowly disappear into the noise of yesterday's gossip.
most influential man in the world, Time Magazine should have been.
No, Meghan Markle beat me.
God, how if it's most influential, there should be there's no debate. Nobody's even in the same category as you.
I don't know. I don't think about it. I try not to. It's a little complicated.
I'm thinking about it, though.
I really shouldn't be influential.
For a moment, it looked like everything had worked out just the way she hoped. The narrative was clean, the image polished, and the old chatter looked buried deep. But then Joe Rogan stepped into the conversation, and suddenly the lid came flying off. When Joe starts digging into something, he doesn't tiptoe around it. He goes full throttle, asking questions and pulling at threads that other people usually avoid. And the chapter he reportedly started revisiting is exactly the kind of story Meghan would rather leave in the past. The talk circled around yachts, powerful social circles, and connections inside elite party scenes that she's rarely been linked to publicly. Suddenly, those old whispers weren't quiet anymore. They were loud, messy, and spreading across the internet again.
If you follow Harry and Meghan, you know all about Marcus Anderson. You know that he always seems to pop up.
Here's why the situation hits so hard. Joe Rogan is not someone who adjusts his tone for powerful people, not for celebrities, not for Hollywood insiders, and definitely not for royal titles. If something feels strange to him, he talks about it openly and keeps asking questions until the conversation explodes across social media. Behind the scenes, reports claim the reaction was immediate. Lawyers reportedly moved quickly, and PR teams were said to be scrambling to control the situation. Phones were lighting up everywhere because the very topic Meghan had worked hard to keep out of the spotlight was suddenly trending again. The chatter included claims about a past yacht party lifestyle and alleged connections to elite social circles that many public figures prefer to keep far away from their names. For someone whose public image is built carefully and strategically, that kind of speculation can turn into a serious reputation headache overnight. And remember something important.
Meghan Markle is reportedly facing a reshuffle in her inner circle as her new Netflix show With Love Meghan, which was launched earlier this month, faced mixed reactions. So how many times have we heard Meghan Markle having a best friend? You know, we've had Jessica Mulroney, Serena Williams.
When Joe Rogan talks, it doesn't stay inside one podcast episode. His show reaches an audience of roughly 200 million listeners across multiple platforms. Once a topic appears there, the internet immediately starts reacting, debating, and spreading the conversation everywhere. That kind of reach is exactly why image-focused public figures pay attention to what he says. Joe doesn't follow royal etiquette. He doesn't adjust his tone for status. Duchess or regular celebrity, the approach is the same. If something looks unusual, he calls it out directly. This isn't the first time he has spoken critically about Meghan either. Back in 2020, he mocked the couple's media strategy, joking that Prince Harry's life was turning into what he described as a celebrity-style brand machine. The delivery was sharp and sarcastic, which is exactly the tone Rogan's audience expects from him. Then, in 2023, he revisited Meghan's past comments about feeling objectified during her time on the show Deal or No Deal.
So the Daily Mail Plus released this article, Why Meghan Markle's best friend, who set her up with Prince Harry, has vanished. Whatever happened to Meghan's best friend Marcus Anderson? The tall, handsome Canadian was third wheel in the early days of her romance with Prince Harry, and he was front and center at their 2018 wedding.
His reaction was blunt and skeptical, questioning the expectations around that role. Again, no soft delivery, no delicate wording, just Joe speaking the way he always does. That's why alarms reportedly started ringing when he began mentioning the old yacht rumors again and discussing elite social circles tied to powerful figures like Prince Andrew. This wasn't a tabloid headline floating around quietly. It was one of the biggest podcast voices on the planet, raising the topic openly. And Joe Rogan isn't part of traditional media structures. He doesn't answer to network executives, and he isn't easily pressured into silence. When someone with that kind of independence begins connecting old rumors, private parties, and elite social networks, the conversation grows fast and loud. What makes it even more interesting is that these rumors are not completely new. They've circulated quietly for years, but rarely did anyone with Rogan's audience size bring them into the spotlight like this.
And you can imagine, since we first revealed this video on last night's show, the reaction around the world has been extraordinary. Piers Morgan posted on X, "We're about 2 months away from the sex tape."
One person who has researched these elite social circles extensively is author Kirby Summers. She spent years studying high-level networks connected to figures like Ghislaine Maxwell while working on an unauthorized biography project. During that research, Summers claimed she came across possible connections suggesting Meghan may have crossed paths with Prince Andrew long before she met Prince Harry. These claims remain unverified, but they continue to circulate in online discussions. According to Summers, there may even be photos from the early 2000s showing Meghan at a yacht gathering in Pattaya, Thailand, where Andrew was reportedly present. She has said the images exist, but were never published by major outlets. Another name that frequently appears in these discussions is Marcus Anderson, known for his association with Soho House social circles. Summers suggests Anderson played a role in introducing Meghan to influential networking environments years before her royal relationship. That's the thread Joe Rogan reportedly started pulling during the conversation.
He's truthful about a lot of the things he says in Spare about this. Well, we want that story to die, so we're going to give you this story. However, he does it today. Him and Meghan do the same thing today. I've seen that Meghan and Harry tried to discredit certain media outlets because they don't like what they're going to say.
Once that thread appeared, people online began revisiting old stories and piecing together connections that had quietly floated around for years. There's also confirmed documentation showing Meghan received an invitation to Yacht Week in Croatia in 2016. And according to media coverage, that event had a reputation far from a calm sailing holiday. GQ once described Yacht Week as Sodom and Gomorrah at sea, while some attendees jokingly called it Tinder at sea, describing a high-energy party environment where wealthy guests gathered for non-stop nightlife on the water. And here's the part people keep side-eyeing. Yacht Week has a reputation for attractive women and a vibe that comes with a lot of unspoken expectations. Did Meghan actually show up? Nobody can say for sure. But the invitation was real, the access was there, and that's the detail Joe Rogan keeps circling like a hawk.
Is this preemptive announcement about Harry's security just more of the same, or is there more to it? Now, initially, I caught the first announcement on it. Then the very first announcement of it was LBC UK. And I sort of thought, yeah, typical Harry and Meghan. Here we go, preemptive announcement.
And notice what Joe is doing here. He's not standing there claiming he has proof. He's questioning why the same names, the same circles, and the same type of events keep popping up around the story. It's less, here's a fact, and more, why does this keep lining up like that? That difference matters, because when tabloids throw around yacht rumors, most people roll their eyes and keep it moving. When royal authors mention it, critics scream, speculation. But when Joe Rogan lays it out on one of the biggest podcast platforms on the planet, pulling an audience of roughly 200 million listeners across platforms, that hits different. Joe has already survived backlash, media dogpiles, and pressure campaigns, so he's not exactly easy to scare off. Spotify drama didn't shut him up, and cancel attempts didn't slow him down either. So when Joe openly asks, what's this about Meghan being on yachts with Prince Andrew? Or, why is Marcus Anderson linked to Epstein-associated social circles? People stop scrolling and start paying attention. Then he throws out the question most mainstream outlets avoid. Why hasn't major media properly investigated any of this?
I don't think that she'll ever let Harry go, because she is so fixated on having a title that she doesn't even have or deserve anymore, right? Yeah. Technically, she's not part of the royal family. On paper, on the website, Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
That's the moment his audience leans in, because once Joe's listeners start clipping segments, digging, comparing timelines, and pushing for answers, polished PR narratives don't land the same way anymore. That's why multiple reports suggest Meghan's team went into panic mode once Joe started talking about it. Not because he proved something, but because he asked questions they couldn't control. You can slap tabloids with legal threats. You can play games with access and headlines. But Joe Rogan doesn't answer to that system, and that's what makes it feel dangerous for anyone trying to keep a tight grip on the storyline. Now let's talk about why the Marcus Anderson angle matters so much. Because this is the part Joe keeps zooming in on. Marcus Anderson is a major figure at Soho House, and he's also the person widely credited with introducing Meghan to Prince Harry. That part is commonly reported and treated as established. But Joe keeps pushing the follow-up questions that make people uncomfortable. How did Anderson decide Meghan was the one to put in the path of a prince? What was their relationship like before Harry ever entered the picture? And why did Anderson have that much confidence making a connection that big? Because Soho House isn't just a cute social club. It's a serious networking machine. Private rooms, private parties, private introductions, set up to keep powerful connections away from public view.
Prince Harry wanted to make amends and come meet my dad. Wow, that's just crazy. I'll tell you right now, Prince Harry, if it has to do with anything with the Netflix crew and cameras, don't even bother. My dad's had enough crap.
And Anderson's job is basically building bridges between people who want access without attention. If you've been around that world since the early 2000s, that's decades of elite contact lists, favors, and introductions happening behind closed doors. And according to research and conversations Joe has referenced, one alleged overlap involves networks tied to the Maxwell and Epstein era circles, with Prince Andrew appearing in the same orbit. That doesn't prove anything by itself. But Joe's point is, why does this social web keep crossing paths in the same direction? Think about what that implies if the connections are real. If Anderson had been introducing Meghan to high-level people years before Harry, then the Harry meeting might not feel random anymore. Joe frames it as strategic networking at the highest level, and he keeps drilling that idea into his audience like a warning bell. And then there's the question Joe keeps hinting at, the piece that refuses to die, the Thailand yacht photos that some claim may exist. That mystery keeps the conversation hot, because it's the ultimate missing puzzle piece that nobody can verify publicly. This is where things get seriously intense. Author Kirby Summers claims major media outlets may already have photos that show Meghan on a yacht in Pattaya, Thailand, with Prince Andrew, dated back to 2001.
Andrew, now just Andrew. There's no coming back for him, is there? I mean, you detail a lot of it in the book. There's a lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of, but he can't come back now, sure.
These are allegations, not confirmed evidence, but Joe keeps asking the same thing out loud. If those images exist, why has nobody published them? Because if something like that were real, it wouldn't just be awkward gossip. It would pull her name into the shadow of one of the darkest scandal timelines connected to the modern royal story. That's exactly why the topic is so explosive. Now, fact checkers have pointed out that some viral images online were misidentified and actually show model Alexandra Escow, not Meghan. That correction matters for those specific photos. But Summers isn't talking about random internet pics. She's claiming there are other alleged images that large media organizations supposedly have but won't touch. And that's the key difference Joe keeps stressing. So why the silence? Lawsuit fear? Defamation risks? Pressure from powerful people? And the same old playbook that makes uncomfortable stories vanish fast.
Given to me and I got it in the car and then returned it straight away.
Once the scandal broke?
As soon as I knew it was a scandal, not once it broke, Michael. But don't try and trick me now, because I'm not going to play this game. Delete that bit. John, can you just delete it, please, that bit? Because I don't want to go down.
When rich and connected names are involved, things tend to get handled behind the scenes. But Joe Rogan doesn't play by those rules. He's openly asking why nobody investigated harder, why nobody's demanding clearer answers, and why these alleged photos, if they exist, are treated like they're off limits. Joe is also hammering one point that keeps people shifting in their seats. He keeps asking about the double standard. Why does Meghan seem to get a pass when anyone else facing similar rumors would be torn apart across headlines every single day? That's the angle Joe keeps pressing, and it's making a lot of powerful people very uncomfortable. This is exactly why Meghan reportedly dislikes Joe's style so much. He's using one of the biggest platforms in the world to ask questions that traditional media outlets often avoid. And when those questions land in front of millions of listeners, the impact hits way harder than any random tabloid headline ever could. Now, here's where the situation gets tough for Meghan's team. In the past, strategies like legal pressure, media management, and carefully crafted statements could shape the narrative. But Joe Rogan doesn't operate inside that system. His show runs from the United States, backed by massive resources and a gigantic audience. Trying to silence someone with that reach would likely create even bigger headlines. If a public figure attempted to shut down Joe's platform, it could easily look like confirmation that sensitive questions are being avoided. And that's exactly the scenario Joe's critics say would backfire instantly. So the usual strategy of legal pressure mixed with PR control becomes almost useless here. You can challenge tabloids in court, you can manage access to royal reporters, but you can't easily control a host who speaks to roughly 200 million listeners across podcast platforms. According to reports and online speculation, the strategy now appears to be silence. The hope seems to be that the conversation fades away with time, but silence carries its own risk. If Joe continues raising questions while the other side stays quiet, audiences may feel like they're hearing only one version of the story. And that version, fair or not, can create the impression that someone is avoiding the topic. Sources claim Meghan's team is frustrated with the situation, but unsure how to respond. If they push back, it could amplify the discussion even more. If they ignore it, Joe can keep bringing the topic back whenever he wants. Joe clearly understands that dynamic. That's why he revisits the subject repeatedly, pointing to the same connections and asking the same unanswered questions. Each time he does it, the conversation starts circulating online again, and the pressure builds around a carefully managed public image. Now think about Prince Harry's position in all of this. Joe has already made jokes about him in the past, questioned the dynamics of the relationship, and suggested that Meghan approached life in elite circles with strong ambition. Those comments alone already sparked debate among listeners. If the yacht rumors ever gained serious mainstream attention, or if the alleged Prince Andrew connection became widely discussed, it could create an uncomfortable situation for Harry's public image. Suddenly, the story stops looking like a simple romance and turns into something much more complicated. Imagine hearing speculation that your partner may have moved in the same elite social circles as your controversial uncle years before you even met. That's the scenario Joe keeps describing during these conversations. Whether people believe it or not, the questions themselves create the controversy. And once questions like that start spreading across the internet, they rarely disappear quickly. Joe Rogan's podcast reaches millions of listeners who clip segments, share them online, and debate them across social platforms. That kind of momentum can keep a rumor alive for months. Harry would have a difficult time responding unless clear evidence appeared to settle the speculation. It's not easy to prove that two people never crossed paths in elite circles years earlier, and the connections through figures like Marcus Anderson keep pulling the conversation back towards Soho House. Some sources claim Harry has already heard the yacht rumors circulating for years. Reports suggest he has wondered privately about parts of Meghan's past that weren't widely discussed early in their relationship. Whether those claims are accurate or not, they continue to circulate online. If Joe keeps revisiting these connections, stacking timelines, and asking why certain relationships existed before Harry entered the picture, the public conversation could shift dramatically. Instead of focusing on romance, people start analyzing networking, ambition, and elite social connections. That shift changes the entire narrative. What once looked like a fairy tale relationship can suddenly be framed by critics as strategic networking within powerful social circles. The spotlight moves toward the Soho House network and the role it plays in connecting influential people. And this is where Joe's attention becomes very specific. Mainstream outlets rarely dig deeply into Soho House culture, but Joe keeps bringing it up because of its reputation as a private networking hub for wealthy and influential members. Take billionaire investor Ron Burkle, for example. He has reportedly been associated with Soho House since the early 2000s and has faced public scrutiny over social overlaps with controversial figures connected to the Epstein era. That connection alone makes the club an interesting topic for investigators. Soho House is famous for strict privacy rules, no photos, no recordings, and very little public documentation about what happens inside those private events. Everything happens quietly behind closed doors, which many members see as the main benefit of joining. That secrecy is part of the brand itself. Powerful people gather in spaces where conversations stay private and introductions happen without cameras. It's a system built entirely around discretion. So when Joe Rogan starts asking what kind of networking actually happens inside those rooms, what relationships were built there, and whether Marcus Anderson helped connect ambitious people with influential figures, the conversation becomes uncomfortable because Soho House cannot deny that introductions happen there. That's literally the foundation of their business model. Their entire purpose is to bring influential people together, but at the same time, publicly examining how those introductions work could expose the private mechanics of the entire network. And when Joe starts asking those questions out loud, it puts everyone connected to that world in a difficult position. That's the position Soho House ends up stuck in. Either they publicly defend Meghan and Marcus Anderson, or they stay quiet and allow speculation to keep spreading. Neither option looks comfortable, and the more silence there is, the more attention their private networking world starts attracting. That spotlight is exactly what Joe Rogan seems to be pushing for. He wants people asking the uncomfortable questions that rarely make it into traditional interviews. Who met who? How were introductions arranged? What relationships and opportunities were quietly formed behind those closed doors? Because once people begin asking those questions, Meghan's carefully crafted public story starts facing intense scrutiny. For years, yacht-related rumors floated around online, but they stayed stuck in the world of fringe speculation. Mainstream outlets brushed them off as gossip and quickly moved on. Then, Joe Rogan stepped into the conversation. Suddenly, those same theories are reaching enormous audiences, discussed on one of the most influential podcasts in the world. When a topic reaches hundreds of millions of listeners, it becomes much harder to dismiss as background noise, and Joe hasn't simply mentioned it once and moved on. Over the years, he has returned to the topic repeatedly, questioning Meghan's motivations and suggesting there may be parts of the story the public hasn't fully heard yet. Those rumors fit directly into the narrative Joe has already discussed with his audience, and that's what creates a difficult situation for Meghan's team. If they stay silent, some people interpret that silence as avoidance. But if they respond publicly, the story grows even bigger. Joe can easily come back with follow-up questions every time a statement appears. That creates a situation where the conversation keeps expanding, and controlling the narrative becomes extremely difficult. That's the dynamic critics say Meghan is stuck inside. Joe continues revisiting the topic, repeating the same lines of questioning and suggesting that certain connections deserve deeper explanation. Now he's pointing toward very specific questions that, according to reports, Meghan's team has never publicly addressed. Questions like, why was Meghan reportedly invited to Yacht Week in 2016 if she wasn't part of those social circles? How did Marcus Anderson gain such close access to both her professional and personal life? And how did a television actress from a cable series appear to move comfortably within extremely wealthy social environments during that time period? Those are the kinds of questions Joe keeps placing in front of his audience. There are also questions about appearances at high-end events with billionaires and influential power brokers. Some listeners even ask about her past interactions with figures such as Ron Burkle and other wealthy Soho House associates. And the biggest question Joe repeatedly brings up is this: did Meghan ever cross paths with Prince Andrew before meeting Prince Harry? It's a question that continues circulating online because the timeline remains unclear to many observers. But here's the key point Joe keeps emphasizing. These are questions, not confirmed accusations. He regularly frames them as observations about patterns, access, and social connections that appear unusual to some listeners. That's where his strategy becomes powerful. Instead of telling the audience what to believe, he lays out the connections and asks them to examine the situation themselves. Meghan, on the other hand, may not want to reopen chapters of her life that she has worked hard to move past. Publicly revisiting old social connections could create even more speculation. Joe has never declared that Meghan was involved in any yacht lifestyle. What he continues to say is, here are the connections and timelines people are talking about. Explain how they fit together. Then he steps back and lets the audience debate it, and that approach can be extremely influential. When audiences feel like they reach conclusions on their own, those beliefs often become even stronger than when someone directly tells them what to think. Joe Rogan's podcast audience is massive, approaching roughly 200 million listeners across platforms. Once those listeners begin sharing clips, discussing theories, and debating timelines online, the conversation takes on a life of its own. So where does the story go from here? Joe Rogan shows no sign of backing away from the topic. With the reach and independence of the world's largest podcast platform, he has the freedom to keep asking questions whenever he wants. And that creates a situation Meghan's team may struggle to control. They cannot easily silence the discussion, and they cannot redirect the narrative when one voice reaches more people than many traditional news networks. Because of Joe's platform, yacht-related rumors are now openly debated across social media. The alleged Prince Andrew timeline is being questioned again, and Marcus Anderson's networking role inside Soho House is receiving new attention. Meanwhile, Meghan's carefully managed public image is now facing intense scrutiny in real time. Once a figure with Joe Rogan's audience begins raising questions that mainstream outlets rarely explore, the conversation spreads fast. And once those questions circulate across millions of screens, there's no easy reset button. When people begin connecting dots publicly and discussing them repeatedly, curiosity tends to grow rather than disappear. At this point, the debate isn't only about whether the rumors are true or false. The larger issue is whether Meghan can navigate the pressure of those questions being asked in front of such a massive audience. Based on the silence and tension surrounding the topic, many observers believe her team understands how powerful that spotlight can be. Joe Rogan didn't make a direct claim. What he did was spark a conversation. And once a conversation like that starts spreading across millions of listeners, it rarely disappears quietly. If you watch this breakdown and have thoughts about the situation, drop them in the comments below. And if you want more deep dive discussions like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who would find the story interesting.